Awesome. All right, all right. What is going on? Coach Corey here. We're going to get this rocking in about 4 minutes. I know sometimes my chat doesn't work, so if somebody wants to throw a comment, just let me know what's going on for you. Throw a comment in there so I know it's working. Honestly, there's really nothing I can do on my side. It's the settings are set. So hopefully we're doing well so far. We'll kick it off right at 5 o'clock. Tonight, I'm going to be sharing with you my experience with eating disorders and disordered eating and how that really led to pretty deep depression. And I don't want it to get too negative, right? It's not a happy subject, but really what you're going to walk away with is an understanding of the power that you have in your hands when you choose to take back control of your nutrition. And the best thing we can really do for ourselves is kind of go digging on our own. And hopefully that's what brought you here is kind of doing some research and doing some digging on your own, because the experts and our doctors, our medical establishment, they're not as helpful as we really want them to be. So I've been there. I get it. I've been prescribed pills, and I know that that's not what we're all looking for. And that's not an appropriate solution for everybody. So we'll dive in there in just a moment. So if you're here and you're logging in, thanks so much for being with me. Thank you for your time. It's almost 5 o'clock here on the West Coast, and it's actually still pretty light out. I can see the trees, and oh, I love that. Days are getting longer. So small celebrations, you could say. Oh, nice. Hi, Mama. Mama's here. I guess you can hear me. So that's good. Got my mom and dad on. So I love it. While we're waiting, just kind of waiting to see if, oh, it's dark in PA. Yeah, you guys are 3 hours behind me. We got 8 o'clock on the East Coast. So heck, that's my bedtime. I'd never be doing this at 8 p.m. Thanks for being here. So it's just about 5 o'clock. Before we kick it off with our topic for this evening, I wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about the nutrition coaching offerings that I have, and maybe that will kind of inspire you to start to organize your nutrition strategy. I'm just really, my mission is to help make really good eating and optimal nutrition accessible to absolutely everybody. So I'm rolling out some different financing options for my 8 weeks personal accountability course. That course is essentially a roadmap for dialing in your nutrition strategy. It's very much for beginners, really taking you through my process of kind of canceling out processed foods and then really honing in on what you should be eating and how much of it you should be eating. Yes, we'll use macronutrients, some tracking, weighing and measuring and getting really real about what you're putting in your mouth. But again, it's very much for absolutely anybody who kind of has that general goal of, I want to eat healthier, or I want to be a healthier person. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, hop on over to my website. It's coachingbycourey.com, and you can start to look around there and kind of get a good handle on my philosophy and maybe set up a call. Can talk about my coaching methods. Additionally, I'm super excited to roll out another service here with you today. So this is kind of a surprise announcement, but I'm really excited about it. So starting in February, every month, I'm going to run a carnivore challenge. And this is something that I've been kind of hesitant to do because it's a 30-day challenge, and we kind of never stick with anything that we do for a 30-day or a, X number of weeks type challenge. So it's been something that I've really been hesitant. But what I actually think is that this is very appropriate if you're someone who's trying out a carnivore or even a ketogenic diet. This could be a really great way for you to kind of dive all in and get a lot of education, a lot of information, very real time, day by day, what your body is doing and why. So I'm in the process of creating an accountability course, I guess, to supplement that challenge that's going to help deliver you again all of the resources kind of all in one place so that you can try carnivore, just eating animal products. First cohort in February. There is information already up about that on my website as well. And you know what I'll do here? I'll just throw it in there so you don't have to guess how to spell my first name, but you can hop on over to my website and check that out. It comes with your personal accountability course, but really it's just a roadmap to help guide you through that huge nutrition shift. And you truly have a chance to decide, you know, do you want to go all in on carnivore? Are you here to learn more? It's really wherever you're at in your nutrition right now. You'll have direct access and communication with me via Slack. I use Slack for communicating with my clients, and then weekly group calls. I'm thinking I'm going to be offering 2 different times for those group calls, so that if you're not able to sit on one, you've got another option. So an early afternoon and maybe a 5 o'clock or an evening time like this to try to get you set up there, but just full support, full on carnivore. So just something different to get excited about. And honestly, I'd say if you try that for 30 days, there's a really strong chance you're going to want to stick with it and maybe, you know, re-up for another 30 days. So we can explore options when we get there, but just a couple things that I'm offering that I'm super excited about. And again, the mission is always just to make optimal, really, really good nutrition available to absolutely anyone. And I just don't think that the dollar amount should stop us from accessing health, right? We run into that enough with our healthcare system. So I don't want to be that type of coach or person. Yeah, making money is great, but there's a lot of other important things out there, like helping each and every one of you discover what great nutrition can really mean for you. And that's a really perfect segue right into what we're talking about this evening. Again, if you're just joining me, I'm Coach Courey, and tonight this show's all about me. I'm going to just talk with you for a little bit here about my experience with depression and eating disorders in the past. And I'm going to let you know here how I've kind of worked out of that and how I'm treating those symptoms, not with medications, but with my nutrition. So let's go for it. So something that I wanted to introduce at the beginning here is one of my coaching philosophies, which is truly just to control what you can control. This is something that my Marie, one of my coaches from college, when I swam at Indiana, Marie would always say, control what you can control. And as annoying as it was, damn, she was right. She was right on. And so what I've done in my coaching is I put together, I call this your sphere of control. So what are the things that are within the sphere of your control? Well, hey, guess what? Your nutrition is one of them. You get to choose every single time it's mealtime, what goes in your mouth and how much of it and where it comes from, you know, all of that good stuff. So your nutrition is a big one. And that's a huge part of why I'm here doing this with you. Your physical movement, just exercise, moving your body. It's a key to sustaining life. And your body is made to move. So that is within the sphere of your control. Make time to move, 6 days a week, 5 minimum. Doesn't have to be intense, but move that body. It loves it. It wants that and it craves it. I missed a day today and that's kind of off plan, but was very productive in other ways. And I'll be really excited to wake up and sweat first thing tomorrow morning. Sleep and recovery are within your sphere of control. Those are pretty obvious ones. Your mindset. This is huge. What you're thinking about, the language that you're using with yourself, the words that you use with yourself, that internal conversation, that is within the sphere of your control. And that leads me to kind of where I'm at, where my starting point was here. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Let's kind of go all the way back. I'm a young girl growing up in PA. I'm an athlete. I'm swimming all the time. I'm very focused. And frankly, if I could think about it, in high school and in middle school, I just didn't have a typical experience from what I can tell. I was so focused in doing my thing, and I had my friends on the cross country team, and I had a swimming community as well. My high school didn't have a swim team, but we would drive 40 minutes to an hour some years. It just depended on where the club team was, where the good coach was. We were driving out there. So I had a mission. I wanted to swim in college. I wanted to go to the Olympics. I had these big goals written down. And I was doing the things on a daily basis to help get myself there. And so again, just hyper focused on those things. I would consider myself a very happy, confident high schooler, which I think maybe is a little bit rare anymore, but there was that. It all changed when I went to college. Now I'm out living alone. I'm in Indiana. I'm in a new place, a new state, all new people, all new schedules, all new food, and an all new swim program. I'm getting myself into this Division I swimming, and I honestly have no idea what I'm walking into. And from day one, I mean, everything was different. You get to college and you're now in control of what you're eating. The things within the sphere of your control. You're controlling what you're eating, your physical movement. That was a little bit more controlled by my coaches. That's okay. We'll leave that one out of this one. Also, excuse me, I think something unplugged. Also, sleep and recovery was looking totally different. I didn't have a dialed in recovery strategy. I don't feel like it was very popular back then. When I was in high school, we were kind of messing around with different recovery strategies, but it wasn't as popular as it is now. I think people now have all kinds of protein powders and stuff like that. And while that existed, again, just not high up on the list of priorities. It was like, you got to train and you got to do the work, I guess. And then my mindset, like I feel like that point in my life really kind of made the change where I often, I went from having mom and dad and kind of my comfort environment as what I was exposed to and what was going in my head and so far as the inputs. And then when I got to college, I mean, all of the inputs absolutely changed. And if you went to college, there's distractions everywhere. We're drinking alcohol, we're partying, there's hot boys, there's school, and now we got to pay attention to college courses and things like that. So yeah, I mean, tons of distractions and lots of different inputs over which I have no control. And I really think that contributed to what began in college, my depression. When I graduated college, that's more of where eating disorders kind of came into play. But we'll focus on that college environment a little bit, because I think that I was just set up for a failure, and we just didn't know any better. So if we're looking at the diet, high in carbohydrates, pretty high in alcohol, low in protein, and again, no real recovery strategy, which to me tells me that I was likely experiencing extremely high levels of inflammation in my body, which is dangerous. And we already know that can lead to a myriad of issues. But I think that kind of set the stage for what would my version of insulin resistance. And for me, the part of my body that was affected, I didn't gain weight. I was an athlete. I was moving my body constantly. I was literally outworking my bad diet. Where my metabolic syndrome manifested was my brain. And I started to get depressed freshman year in college. I'm going to say we a lot here when I'm talking about college, because I was a part of a group of women. We talked a lot about what was going on with us. We were very connected. We spent tons and tons of time together. And what I recognize in hindsight is that when I was kind of going through a lot of these problems, or when I start to think about the root cause of some of these problems, it was because my mindset was on the tasks at hand. I needed to be a really high level athlete and I needed to be dialed in. And so I thought that what I heard from the other women, what the coaches were telling the other women, I assumed that went for me too. So we had a coach that would say, like, we used these pulley systems. We had these weights on deck, and we would tie something around our waist and we would swim with this resistance. It was a very unique to Indiana thing. And we had a coach that would say, okay, so-and-so, women's team member, go over to the weights, pick up a 10-pound plate, walk around with it for 10 minutes, and then put it down. That's how much weight we want you to lose. They would call us into our office and they would say, hey, here's a diet plan. You need to be a little bit more, dialed in or in tune of what you're eating. So we're going to recommend this one. And like, I just didn't know how to take that. I was always like this skinny girl. I never actually had to worry about my weight. I was so active. And honestly, growing up at the household, we had a really healthy diet and we were doing the best that we could. I'm really fortunate to have a dad in the dairy industry. So we were all for the full fat dairy and keeping meat in our diet, where I know that at that time, people were still very much following the guidelines and going for, high carbohydrate, low fat. Well, we were kind of like in the middle with like if I had to guess, honestly, it was probably like a standard ratio of macronutrients, whatever. About 30% of our diet coming from protein, 35 from carbs, and 35 from fat. I actually think would be a pretty good representation of kind of how I grew up. And then again, just on the flip side, going to college was like, here's a meal plan or walk around with that weight, and that's what we want you to lose. Well, we were all doing the same things, and we're together all the time. We eat together, we drink together, we whatever together, we do our homework, we do everything together. And so for me, I was associating some of these things that the coaches were saying to other women on the team. I was automatically making it kind of about me and associating that with myself. And I was also involved in some of those conversations, like literally being passed a meal plan. So yeah, that all really, really bothered me. And I would say that pretty much starting second semester, my freshman year of college, I was already pretty depressed, very stressed out from grades. I did not do well academically the first semester of my freshman year. And I gained weight for sure. I was the heaviest I ever was, and you could always see it in my face and my chubby cheeks. And I I was still outworking that bad diet, but what was going physically, it was really okay. I wasn't the heaviest girl, and I wasn't maybe the skinniest girl anymore, but I was still strong and I was still producing. And so you kind of, when you're a student athlete, you train yourself to not listen to yourself, and that in the long run ended up being pretty detrimental to me, and I don't encourage it. Athletes need to stay aware, and you need to kind of have a balance of when to keep pushing and when to maybe ask for something different and recover and get healthy. And I wasn't ever able to ask for what I needed. I was kind of taking in all of that information from the people around me and trying to make the best decisions that I could. I was young. And so I think that's pretty understandable. So after my freshman year, yes, like I stayed at school all summer. I swam. We did some kind of championship meet at the end of that summer. It was the year after Olympic trials, so I'm pretty sure it was US Open. And I swam fine. It was okay. I can't remember any times from college. I honestly don't remember a lot except for my two best races of all time, one my junior year and one my senior year. And I've truly blocked out a lot of that experience because I was miserable. I hated swimming. I mean, by halfway through my freshman year, I hated swimming. I felt like the coaches, they took it away from me, and it was really upsetting. But when I saw the other women that went through that program, there was no way in hell I was quitting. I was not a quitter. That's not how I was raised. And I was going to fight, even if it meant fighting through this depression. I probably didn't label it depression or label that eating disorder until my sophomore year. So kind of bearing with me here, I'll speed things up, but this really sets the groundwork for where I'm coming from. So my sophomore year of college, I really started to just not take care of myself. And I wasn't eating the way that I needed to be eating. I was definitely not getting the nutrients that I needed. And I didn't have any kind of support system from my coaches. And it's not that my team wasn't a support system, but we were all dealing with it. Like there were many women on our team who were anorexic, not eating, starving themselves, depressed, seeking a counselor and other, honestly, medications. By the end of my senior year in college, more than half of our women's team was going to see the same psychiatrist. I went to see him once. I felt like he literally already knew who I was, and I never went back there again. It was a terrible experience sitting there trying to talk about my experience and my feelings and whatever with a total stranger. It sucked. So I kind of decided in that moment by my senior year that I didn't want to talk to a stranger about my problems. I didn't want to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I didn't want medication. It was something, and that's something that's kind of come from my upbringing, is like, we're just not really a meds type family. And I didn't want that for myself. I grew up in a household that was like, hey, if you take these meds, they just mess with you and you might feel relief for a little bit. But we kind of knew, again, with my dad's science background, we knew that stuff was crap and we wanted to stay away from it. So from sophomore through senior year, I was dealing with undereating, definitely not getting the nourishment that I needed, feeling extremely depressed and behaving in ways that I was like, why am I even doing this? But I just felt like I had no control. And that control is something that I talk about a lot now. Regain control, take back control. That's very important to me when it comes to these things, when it comes to your sphere of control and the things that you can control. So now let's fast forward. College kind of sucked. It is what it is. I finished swimming. I got it done. I had some good races. We won Big Tens. There's like absolutely great things that happened and amazing friendships that came out of that time. And yeah, I mean, we all suffered together, and there's definitely a bond there that is unbreakable. But it's like, do you really want to build bonds and friendships in that way? And it's not the worst, but I feel like there's better ways. So I graduate from college, and these become some of the worst years of my life. I think I can remember specifically living in Indianapolis after college, calling my mom, just bawling my eyes out, unable to control my emotions. And now I'm starting to kind of explore nutrition. I graduated from college with a degree in health education, so I should have had a really solid background in it, but I still felt like I was like floating around out there. I really didn't know what to do. So I started in like Pinterest. So if you can remember, if you can kind of take your mind back to like 2013 and 14, being on Pinterest was huge. And, scrolling through images and seeing images of women with this body type that I wanted. And I was going to do anything to get my body to look like that. And I feel like there's probably a lot of women out there who can relate. You see a woman kind of sitting down all crunched up, but it's like she still has abs like that. Well, shit, when I do that, I've got like rolls. What kind of work do I need to get into? And so you start cutting and restricting, and I made up these rules for myself: no eating after this time, no eating these things. And this is where, unfortunately, the eating disorders kind of started to creep up to a point where I was binging and purging even at work. And that's extremely embarrassing. It didn't feel good. It wasn't something that I wanted to be involved in. It felt outside of my control. Why am I doing this? What is going on? All the while, I think I'm looking at these photos on Pinterest, and there's just something inside of me that's like, you can do this. You need to eat the right stuff. You need to figure out what that is for you. So at the time, I mean, eating the right stuff was stuffing yourselves with vegetables and plant-based items and lean meats. And essentially, that's the journey that I ended up being on for the next maybe 6-8 years, right? So let's think 2014, 2015, 16, 17. 18. Okay, that was an exaggeration. For about the next 4 or 5 years of eating, including being vegetarian. I was never full on vegan, but vegetarian. I was preparing lots and lots of vegetables for myself, very, very low in calories, tracking everything in MyFitnessPal and trying to eat like 1,200 calories a day. So I'm 6'1", and my average weight right now is about 155 to 160. So your girl needs way more nutrition than 1,200 calories a day. That's absolutely ridiculous. And hey, guess what? I wasn't getting the results I wanted anyway. Now, in the meantime, in all of this, I got introduced to CrossFit. I got introduced to yoga, and I did my yoga teacher training. That's some of the best mental work I've ever done on myself, is hopping into a power yoga room and listening to these women talk about your breath and your body. And I mean, honestly, all of these principles that I love, it's like taking back that control. I have a list of what I talked about at the beginning over here. So I feel like I keep pointing over here. It's just my notes. And so I got introduced to CrossFit. And when I walked into the CrossFit gym for the second time, the first time was in Indianapolis, and I was like, it was way too close to college swimming. And I was like, nobody needs to work out like this. I don't understand. And I walked out and never did it again for another year. And then sometime in 2014 or 2015, I walked back into my friend's CrossFit gym. And then suddenly I'm in a conversation with her husband, like, what are you eating? Log your food, bring it in. Let's talk about it. Let's look at it, and let's get you healthy. And that was like my first experience with someone who was like genuine and kind and wanted to help me through this problem. It was in a CrossFit gym. And that was super impactful. And I think that's one of the things that hooked me in was, not only are you encouraged to just be extremely strong and throw weight around and, hop in that room and do new stuff and different combinations of things and just suffer. And I loved that suffering. I felt like I needed that. But they were also giving me guidance and showing me compassion around how I could be a stronger, like a physically stronger person using my nutrition. And so again, this is just supporting the fact that I could use my nutrition to get healthy, or, to get the body that I wanted, maybe a more shallow goal, but just as valid. We have that goal often throughout our lives, all of us, right? Um, I also was living in Charleston. So I was living in Charleston that second time that I walked into a gym. And when I was living there, the depression got so bad that I did seek help. I sat down with someone and they prescribed me medication off that first visit. I took it for maybe a month and I noticed that it made my appetite go away. And that was the exact opposite of what I was looking for. Like, I didn't need to not have an appetite. I needed to learn how to fuel and feed my body and heal and get healthy. And so once I walked into that CrossFit gym, honestly, kind of at the same time as taking that medication, within the next 2 months, I weaned myself off the medication and never went back on. That was not the strategy that I wanted to use. There's nothing wrong with it. And I understand that it can be helpful. This is so truly just my story and my perspective and what's led me to managing all of these symptoms that I struggled through. So off and on then while I'm living in Charleston, I lived in Charleston through 2016. The depression was absolutely getting better and the eating disorders finally fell away. It was like I understood that, hey, you are what you eat. When you're doing CrossFit and you're trying to go into the gym 5 and 6 times a week and you're trying to spend an hour or even 2 or more hours there, doing this physical exercise and getting stronger, you learn very quickly that you need to fuel your body appropriately. So that's when I really got introduced to the CrossFit diet. And this is like step 1 on my roadmap. When you enter my personal accountability courses and my nutrition coaching program, it's let's get you off of processed foods. We need meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and absolutely no sugar. Okay, the no sugar part definitely didn't happen, but adding protein in, getting the right proteins, getting the right kinds of carbohydrates, and starting to just be aware and draw attention to my nutrition. This was huge, huge first steps for me to take. And it happened slowly over the course of a year or so. I stuck with CrossFit for a really long time and I still do it. So I'm totally identifying as a CrossFitter and I still identify as an athlete. I moved to Seattle in 2016 and just a big stress, a big shock. And I found myself kind of in that depression again. Honestly, this time it was as I grew out of the eating disorders, the stress and the depression became much more linked to my finances. But when I started to become more financially responsible and just look that stuff in the eyes, that depression and that kind of stress started to fall away. So what I've learned is that you need to do the exact thing that you're avoiding. It's pretty good advice, typically speaking. But yeah, I find that a lot. I kind of will say, hey, I'm kind of a silly woman, but I really just needed to do the thing that I was avoiding the most. And and that was, just getting in touch with my finances. So I dealt with that depression for a good 8 to 10 years when I was in college. It kind of just is what it is. But once I entered that true adulthood and I was out there on my own, no more protections, no more cushy coaches or mom and dad, it very much became up to me. I was constantly searching for like that answer, like what do I need to eat? It always came back to food for me. Other things that I did while I was in Seattle, I think I started to kind of overwork out and I got really thin again. I can kind of go back in time and look at some photos and notice where I'm feeling particularly depressed because I wasn't drinking alcohol this time, but I get puffy, I get inflamed in my face. And I can always tell when I go back through my pictures when I was really struggling and going through a hard time. Things really shifted for me. In 2018, I went to my best friend's wedding out in Martha's Vineyard, and I met a guy there who was doing carnivore. And again, at the time, I'm downing vegetables. I'm restricting calories. I'm probably much higher carb and much lower fat than I would ever care to admit. And so then I'm kind of confronted with this really weird, unique diet that I've never heard of before, had no exposure to, but I was like, no veggies, let's go. This is me. This diet is for me. So I left that wedding and I started it right away. As soon as I got back to Seattle after that trip, I was like, I'm eating meat, I'm eating, animal products. And I dove in and I did carnivore for 7 or 8 months. It was a really big chunk of that year. Now, I wasn't strict. I'm not going to lie about it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't do a lot of research. I wasn't on YouTube like I am now, kind of digging up the resources and the science and things like that. I was just winging it. And I started losing weight, and that was happy and or made me happy. And I felt leaner, but I was still kind of able to throw around weight in the gym. And I felt strong. Like that diet made me feel really invincible for a little while. And then I met Greg, and he's a foodie, and watched last week's episode. We fell off the carnivore. I tried to get him to do it, and it didn't work. And so in general, honestly, up and kind of understanding, looking my problems in the eyes, and looking for answers in dumb places like social media and Pinterest. Like I grew out of all of that stuff, and I was still kind of just on this mission to figure it out. I knew I wasn't totally dialed, and I was started dating Greg and had this amazing support system of being able to share with him, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and this is where I think that this comes from, and I'm working through it, and I'm trying to manage my emotions and things like that. So let me backtrack just a little, because somewhere in the mix there, my dad, my sister, and I, we all started to recognize that we have chronic or relapsing Lyme. We all had Lyme disease at some point when we were younger, or maybe even not younger. I think I had it twice when I was younger. My sister had it a few times as well, and maybe even into adulthood. And I believe my dad as well. And so once we started honing in on the Lyme thing, well, guess what? You can get really depressed from that. Lyme affects your neurological system, which means that it affects your brain and it affects your processes there. Other things that I've learned since then is that high levels of oxalate in your system can make Lyme chronic. And so oxalates are a whole other thing, you guys. I'll throw that one out there, but very casually. I'm not going to go into it. Read Toxic Superfoods by Sally K. Norton. But oxalates are involved in that equation, potentially allowing the Lyme to kind of continue in the body. And Lyme is really sneaky. It'll hide, and then it'll present, and it can present in a number of different ways. The way it presents for me is different than my dad, is different from my sister. But I think there's a lot of different things that kind of set me up for the eating disorders and the depression. But it very much comes back to my brain being insulin resistant, having a lot of carbohydrates and also alcohol in my diet for a while there. And then just like starving myself and needing to totally binge some evenings because I just wasn't getting enough calories, and it was terrible. It was a really bad experience. So kind of throwing the Lyme in there. Now we're kind of caught up. Okay. I've dealt with it on and off. There's certain years and certain phases where that the depression became more than just crippling, just really, really a big problem. And what I'm doing now, and the way that I'm managing it now, yes, it's carnivore, but these diets, keto, ketovore, carnivore, these diets exist on a continuum, and it very much depends on how deep you want to go and how quickly. I hopped into a CrossFit webinar to watch. It was Dr. Anthony Chafee, and his whole slogan is plants are trying to kill you. He too is a carnivore. He is like a red meat eater, red meat and water. That is his diet, and he is thriving. And I was like, here's this guy. Like, I have a little bit of experience with carnivore, but here's this guy who's like, plants are trying to kill you. Not only is he being dramatic about it, but he's more than a stand for it. I had the opportunity to ask him a question. What's your experience with relapsing tick-borne fever or Lyme? It could be called either one. And I submitted that question to him, and he had the opportunity to answer it. And he just straight up looks into the camera and goes, "Oh, carnivore heals Lyme." And then he started talking about like Crohn's disease or something, like, I don't know, something that was probably more relatable for the majority of the audience, because Lyme was such a specific, honed in question. And I'm just like, what the heck? Like, it heals it. I'm going through neck pain, back pain, depression. I'm having, I'm talking with my sister and my dad about our symptoms all the time. And we're like, oh, hey, you can cure that if you just eat steak and water. So if making bacon and eggs for breakfast, because we already solidified that as like a go-to breakfast. We absolutely still do that most mornings. And I was just like, this is it. I'm going carnivore. And I told him why. And we just started doing the research right then. We just started, looking more and more into it. Let's look at, hormones, what's happening with your hormones, what does it mean to be in nutritional ketosis, what is the effect, can you be in it for a long time, and just gathering the information, very much drinking from a fire hose and just collecting all of this information. It's been such a ride. So now, over the holiday season, I did what I wanted to do this year, and I enjoyed time with my family, and we celebrated with food and meals, and yes, even a few cookies. Um, I I was full on carnivore October 24th. Okay, October 24th, right up until Thanksgiving. We enjoyed Thanksgiving with friends here. Got right back on our carnivore diet in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Enjoyed our Christmas, enjoyed our New Year's, and then bam, January 1, we're right back into full carnivore again. And so what does that mean for me? That means I'm eating all animal products. My body is physically switching over from using glucose as a primary fuel source to using ketone bodies or being fat adapted. I now use fat for energy. And really, it was that transition that was the most rocky. But when I'm fat adapted, my previous experience with carnivore last year and now again adapting this year, and I think I just like came out of the clearing. I think I'm like officially back in ketosis and kind of through this transition period, which was much like way less fun this time than, not that it was fun last time, but just way less fun this time than it was the last time. Just like a little bit rockier, which is okay. And like I said, we had fun holiday season, so you reap what you sow. I find that I have like very clear levels of just that mental kind of focus. So that mental energy, absolutely have had an increase in performance there. Although I'm very well aware of a little blemish on my skin right now, typically speaking, my skin looks and feels really good. So over the years, while I was really eating that disorganized way and through college, I had eczema really, really bad. I would wake up in the morning and I'd be bleeding behind my knees because I had scratched at it so bad in the evening. And so understand that skin problems like eczema, psoriasis, or rashes, acne, these things are very much maybe that's not necessarily a direct correlation of your gut microbiome health, but it's some sort of reflection of your gut microbiome health. And I know that, while I was depressed, my gut health was pretty low. It was depressed too, let's be honest. And so, yeah, the psoriasis was something that I dealt with. My skin is really generally really good. I think that I experience a little bit of oxalate dumping. And so, yeah, every now and then we'll eat something it'll kind of cause a little bit of a breakout in a certain area. It's not where I usually would get like hormonal zits. So I feel like there's something different there. Yeah, my mood is better. I've suffered with these like outbursts of irritability and rage. And honestly, specifically, it had gotten a lot worse after I got a concussion last year and experienced traumatic brain injury and swelling in my cranium. I would have these like, I wanted to like beat up a door or the trash can and just like absolutely lose my crap. And I do not experience that anymore. I never feel that kind of rage. If you're from Pennsylvania or maybe you know someone from there, we have something that we call the PA rage. And it's kind of like, I'll keep my cool to a certain point, but when you hit that tipping point, I'm gonna blow. And so, yeah, we would joke about that, but it was something that I was really feeling, and I was actually experiencing this. I had already mentioned body pains, neck pain, back pain. I'd experienced a lower back injury in 2015 that would randomly flare up for absolutely no reason. I was doing nothing different in my fitness and my weightlifting and the amount of weight that I was getting under, but it would tweak or something would happen and it would come back up again. So those little things have pretty much all subsided. Generally, even heal and it balances out your body to lose weight or just generally get healthy. Let's see. Energy are crazy. You'll hear some people talk about like the crazy energy levels that they have, or like I can't eat after a certain time because I'll be wired for the next 3 or 4 hours. So, and we have some friends who are experimenting with the ketogenic diet as well, and just playing along with that. So That's really the bulk of it. So again, that's 35 minutes of me sharing a story. And I really appreciate your time. And thank you so much for being here and listening because it's hard to talk about. And it's not stuff that I like to talk about, but I also recognize that if it helps people understand that you can take back that control with your diet, it's worth it. And so, again, I'm offering this opportunity for a carnivore challenge. And what that can really do for you, you can do it with me, you can do it on your own, take control for sure. But what you'll start to recognize is exactly how much your nutrition impacts your overall health. And I'll share with you that the bottom line is that if you need energy to do something, then nutrition is the very first thing. It's the bottom of the pyramid. It's the thing that you have to pay attention to. Okay, it's the common pathway between all of these metabolic symptoms, if not metabolic syndrome or disease, and there's specific definitions of all of that. What you should know is that a ketogenic or even a carnivore diet is one of the best ways to rapidly find yourself in a healthier position. It's really fun to know that you don't need veggies. I'm your girl who was like always working on getting her veggies. So when Greg and I started really honing in our strategy and we went to that CrossFit diet, meat, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, some fruit, little veggie, where's our veggies? What's our veggie going to be? Do we have the veggie? Is the veggie prepared? Like it was always about the veggie because it was the hardest one to do because I didn't want it. It doesn't taste good. Nobody likes Brussels sprouts. We would much rather have bacon, right? Like, duh. So that was always my challenge. And so just kind of recognizing, okay, it feels like carnivore is restrictive, but it's not. It's absolutely freeing. The benefits 100% outweigh anything that you're restricting. And know that when you're on a carnivore diet, you don't need to count, you don't need to weigh and measure, you don't need to keep track of calories or macro ratios or anything like that. You need to make sure that when you eat, there's fat in pretty much every bite, even if it's a chunk of muscle meat just coated in butter. You just make sure that you're getting enough fat and protein. And when your body has the essential nutrients that it needs, it can get to work on getting you healthy again. And it will. So I've kind of alluded to like oxalate dumping and things like that. You'll experience just these windows of health that are going to blow your mind, and you've never felt energy like this. At least you haven't in a while, and you've never felt that clarity and the inspiration and the motivation to just do what you want to do and love it and find enjoyment there. You'll also go through phases that are like, well, what the heck is going on? And again, it's your body's it's reached a point where it can start to heal something else that's kind of been hidden under the surface, and we're all hiding it. And again, let me run through some of those. All of these things are affected directly by your nutrition, and these are symptoms that you don't have to deal with. Obviously, depression, eating disorders are right up there. Any kind of irritability, like mental and kind of mood irritability. You don't have to deal with headaches or migraines every day. You don't have to deal with IBS or sleep issues all the time. Constipation, diarrhea, anything that has to do with your GI tract. Yes, your nutrition directly affects it. Did you know that 90% of your serotonin, one of your main happiness hormones, is not produced in your brain or in glands? It's produced in your gut. Happiness and emotion is strongly tied to your nutrition and eating. And I think the sooner that we can kind of recognize that emotional attachment specifically to carbohydrates, the sooner that you can start to drop them out of the equation or drastically reduce them. I have to stay within the scope of my practice, but know that the carnivore and the ketogenic diet reverses chronic disease. There are a lot of studies about this out there. You can find them. You can ask me for them, and I'll link you with them. But I would highly recommend that you read Brain Energy by Dr. Christopher Palmer, a psychiatrist who identifies all mental health disorders as metabolic disease. Also, Alzheimer's is now known as type 3 diabetes. It is avoidable. It is because of high carbohydrate consumption as well as medications, including statins and antipsychotics in your consumption. And again, we can have this fullest expression of health that is free of supplements, pharmaceuticals, and surgeries. So anytime I bring on a client or I'm working with family or friends or whomever it is, like my secret goal for you is just that. How can we find optimal health for you in the absence of supplements, pharmaceuticals, and surgeries? And again, I need to stay within the scope of my practice. I'm a nutrition coach, simply sharing a story that I get passionate about. So, yeah, your nutrition, it's a lot of it. The mitochondria, I don't know if I said that in this video, but your favorite organelle is the mitochondria. It's the basis of all of our energy, but that little guy produces hormones. Tell us the name of the book and the author. Says so. It's called Brain Energy by Christopher Palmer, MD. It's a really good one. If you want to learn more about oxalates, it's Toxic Superfoods by Sally K. Norton. I think she's a Cornell grad, and she's got a really good story about her, her superfood diets and being vegan and the plethora of health issues that she ran into. If you want to hop on YouTube and kind of look at some of the individuals that I look up to, I get a lot of information from these guys. Dr. Ben Bickman, he's a biochemist. Dr. Jason Fung, I don't know what his specialty technically is, but he's got some really good talks debunking calories in, calories out, which I'll do for you right here if you want. If anyone has questions, type them in that box. I know my mom is doing it, but if you got questions, type them in. Otherwise, I'm going to talk for another 4 minutes or so, and we'll cut it. But yeah, calories in, calories out is not the full equation. Whenever anything seems too simple in nutrition, it probably isn't true. Like if you're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Like it's probably not the full story of what's going on in your body. Nutrition is super complex, and that makes it a lot of fun. And I'm in a position where I kind of get to look up all of these different facets of nutrition and learn about them and kind of start connecting these dots in a way that specific researchers in fields, they don't always get to do. But when it comes to calories in, calories out, it's straight up not true. I actually just watched a video earlier. Oh, Dr. Sean Baker is another really good guy to follow when it comes to carnivore. He's kind of like the king of carnivore. He was the first one that I found doing it. And he's a doctor as well. He just had a guy on his show today who was eating over 3,000 calories a day and still losing weight. And I can promise you, he wasn't burning 4,000. So you straight up don't need to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight. You may be making other sacrifices. But again, when the bottom line is your health and it's, not having to go to the doctor 5 times a month or being like ping pong ball off of like, well, that doctor referred me to that doctor, referred me to that doctor. And now I'm on this list of meds and I started this med and then I had to go see a doctor because of the side effect of that med. Like that's a crazy web of mess. Like that is the mess. That's exactly what we're avoiding here. Now I'm just here to tell you that it is avoidable. Okay. 45 minutes from me. That's a lot of Courey talking. Thank you so much if you were here. If you're streaming this later, thank you for your time. Comment, like, share, do all of the things that you're supposed to do when you're on YouTube and somebody wants you to change the algorithm and all of that good stuff. Always let me know what questions you have. You can reach out to me through my Facebook, my LinkedIn, through my website. Hop on there, get signed up for my carnivore challenge. Give this thing a try and just take back control. I always say this, don't take my word for it. Do some research on your own and let's roll forward. Let's do it. Take back control and just live with a good energy and less distraction. I don't even know. Y'all, thank you so much. Again, I'm Coach Courey. I'm going to do it again next week. I'm honestly thinking that maybe I'll bring the computer down to the kitchen and we'll kind of start to look at some of the foods that Greg can prepare, and we can kind of get you going on some of these really tasty carnivore recipes. I think that'd be a really fun change of pace where it's not just me talking into the camera. So I'll see you then. Have a great week.